Friends, let's sit for a moment by this imaginary fireplace to reflect on a question that has haunted humanity since we invented money. Should you invest your available capital or pay off your debts first? I'm Charlie Munger, or at least I channel his pragmatic spirit, and I'm not here to sell you dreams of easy wealth. Instead, I offer an honest dissection using mental models from multiple disciplines because, as I always say, the world isn't divided into academic silos. Reality is an interconnected tapestry. This choice isn't just arithmetic, it's a test of worldly wisdom. Think of this as a reverse investing problem. What elementary mistakes do people make when they misprioritize? Most jump into investing lured by promises of returns, while debt acts as an invisible anchor. We'll use psychology to unravel biases, biology to understand compounding as evolution, physics to calculate opposing forces of interest, and history to learn from past failures. There are no universal answers, but logic guides us. Ignore mental models, and you are fooling yourself. The easiest kind of self deception. Remember my mantra: it's remarkable how much long term thinking can improve the short term. Paying off debt might seem like an immediate loss, but it's like pruning a diseased tree so it can grow strong. Investing with outstanding debt is like gambling in a casino against the house. Let's explore this slowly without rushing, like a mentor sharing hard won lessons, not like a Wall Street charlatan. In this script, we'll break down the dilemma in detail. Real data, anecdotes from figures like Benjamin Franklin or collapsed empires, and practical advice for your daily life. We'll avoid vague generalities. Instead, we'll use pure logic and life ethics. For example, if your credit card debt is around 20% annually, why on earth would you invest in a market that averages 7 to 10%? Sarcasm aside, it's intellectually dishonest to ignore it. At the end of this 45-minute talk, you will leave with tools to make decisions, not illusions. But let's start with the core, recognizing that this choice reveals your character. Like the Lollapalooza effect, multiple factors combine to amplify mistakes or successes. Prepare to think from a multidisciplinary perspective because worldly wisdom isn't optional. It's essential to avoid ending up like those fools you admire but never emulate. Let's get to the heart of the matter without rushing. One of the most revealing mental models comes from behavioral psychology. Most of us underestimate the true cost of debt because we suffer from hyperbolic discounting, that bias that makes us value immediate rewards like the thrill of investing and seeing potential quick profits more than deferred benefits. Kahneman and Tversky demonstrated this clearly. We ignore future losses while present ones weigh heavily on us. Today, December 22, 2025, average credit card interest rates hover around 22 to 23% according to data from Wallet Hub and Lending Tree. My practical advice: if your debt exceeds 10%, pay it off first. You get a guaranteed return of 22 on 23% tax free and without market risk. Following that line of thought, let's connect it to biology because compound interest is similar to Darwinian natural selection. Small accumulated advantages generate dominant results over time. Benjamin Franklin called it the eighth wonder of the world, but he cautioned that debt can turn it into devastating negative compounding. Do the math. $10,000 at 7% annual compound interest grows to about $7,623 in 30 years. But debt at 22 or 23% interest will drain that amount if you don't take action. In my younger years, I avoided foolish debt so that compounding would work for me, not against me. and that discipline made all the difference in the long run. Now let's look at it from a physics perspective. As forces in constant opposition, debt acts like inexorable gravity, pulling you down with increasing acceleration due to compounding. Investment returns are an upward force, but volatile and unpredictable. The formula A shock to PY1 plus R at illustrates this. A negative return on debt destroys wealth faster than a positive return creates it. As of December 22nd, 2025, 10-year Treasury bonds are yielding around 4.17%, and the S&P 500 has historically averaged 10% with volatility. Therefore, paying off high debts first neutralizes that destructive gravity before attempting to rise. History offers invaluable lessons here. The 19th century British Empire accumulated debts from wars but systematically paid them off to invest in the Industrial Revolution and prosper. In contrast, post-revolutionary France fell into hyperinflation due to mismanaged debt. Warren and I in the 1970s avoided excessive leverage when so many lost everything in crashes. Today, the average credit card debt for those carrying a balance is around $6,500, $7,000 with interest rates of 22 to 23%. Paying that down saves thousands in interest compared to potential gains or losses in a volatile and unpredictable market. From an economic perspective, it all boils down to opportunity cost, a simple yet powerful concept. Every dollar allocated to paying down high debt generates a guaranteed return that typically exceeds the historical average of stocks that oft cited 10% nominal return. It's intellectually dishonest and frankly reckless to invest with outstanding debts at 20% or more. As I've always emphasized, avoid basic foolishness. The practical approach is clear. List your debts by interest rate, prioritizing those above 8%, especially with current inflation projected at 2.7% by November 2025. This basic discipline can change entire financial trajectories. From an economic perspective, it all boils down to opportunity cost, a simple yet powerful concept. Every dollar allocated to paying down high debt generates a guaranteed return that typically exceeds the historical average of stocks that oft cited 10% nominal return. It's intellectually dishonest and frankly reckless to invest with outstanding debts at 20% or more. As I've always emphasized, avoid basic foolishness. The practical approach is clear. List your debts by interest rate, prioritizing those above 8%, especially with current inflation projected at 2.7% by November 2025. This basic discipline can change entire financial trajectories. Continuing with the psychology, loss aversion plays a trick on us. Paying off debt feels like an immediate defeat, like giving up real money, while investing promises tempting future gains. Tversky and Kahneman showed that losses hurt twice as much as equivalent gains. With a touch of benevolent sarcasm, congratulations if you prefer to keep paying 22 to 23% interest just to dream of 10%. You are financing your own inertia. It's better to face it. Interest is real and cumulative loss. Let's turn to applied biology. High interest debt acts like a parasite, draining vital resources and disrupting the financial homeostasis that every healthy system needs. Your body eliminates infections before they grow. Do the same with toxic debt. Warren Buffett quickly paid off any minor debt in his early days to invest with a clear mind, and that's how he built Berkshire Hathaway without constant anchors. This preliminary cleansing allows the financial organism to truly thrive. From the perspective of momentum physics, paying off smaller debts first, the snowball method generates positive psychological inertia. like Newtonian acceleration propelling you forward. Once a few are eliminated, you feel your net worth gaining real momentum toward investments. Of course, adjust for the math. If any debt exceeds 15 to 20%, disregard the psychological order and tackle the most expensive ones directly. This combination of psychology and pure arithmetic works wonders. History is full of crashes that illustrate this. In 1929, many invested with leverage, debt, and the collapse ruined them completely. In 2008, subprime mortgages at 6 to 8% seemed acceptable until values plummeted and dragged everything down with them. Today, with average mortgages around 6.2%, if it's tax deductible and at a reasonable fixed rate, you could invest alongside it, but only if you don't have outstanding consumer debt at 22 to 23%. Let's use reverse investing. My favorite method: ask yourself what's leading you to irreversible ruin. Unpaid debts can drag you into bankruptcy with lasting consequences. A bad investment is usually a loss that can be recovered over time. Prioritize avoiding total catastrophe. From an ethical standpoint, living below your means, as I always did, gives you true freedom and a safety net for future decisions. Let's not ignore social psychology. On social media, you see successful investors boasting about their profits, but they rarely reveal the hidden debts behind them. Ignore that constant noise, focus on your personal numbers. Practical tip: review your balance sheets monthly, like a scientist observing data without emotion. This simple routine prevents envy from leading you to make reckless decisions. Let's return to evolutionary biology. Paying off debt is a basic adaptation for financial survival. Investing is wealth creation, the next step. Without a sound foundation, you won't prosper in the long run. As Malthus warned, uncontrolled debt grows exponentially, devouring income before you accumulate anything significant. Similarly, from the perspective of uncertainty physics, such as quantum mechanics, markets are probabilistic and unpredictable. High debts are classical and deterministic. They are repaid with certainty every month. Reduce risk with a guarantee first. Data supports this. Expected stock returns are 7 to 10% post inflation. Consumer debt often easily exceeds 15, 20 to 23%. Speaking from personal experience, in the 70s, I made some bad investments that cost me dearly, but without massive debt, I recovered quickly and moved on. Clear lesson: a clean platform without anchors allows for full compounding. That solid foundation was key to everything that followed. In behavioral economics, hyperbolic discounting makes us prioritize the excitement of investing now, postponing debt payments. But paying off debt reduces immediate stress and frees up real cash flow. Practical tip: automate extra payments toward large debts to overcome this bias and watch progress accelerate on its own. In behavioral economics, hyperbolic discounting constantly betrays us. We prefer the immediate thrill of investing today, postponing debt repayment for a tomorrow that never comes. But paying them off reduces real stress and frees up cash flow immediately. My practical trick, which I've always recommended, is to automate extra payments toward the highest interest debts. This way, you overcome the bias almost effortlessly and progress accelerates on its own thanks to positive compounding, which starts working in your favor from the very first month. Let's think in terms of complex systems. High debt creates negative feedback loops. Interest generating more interest, draining resources that could fuel investment. Breaking that loop first is essential. Once done, you enter positive loops where compound capital grows uninterrupted. It's like clearing a clogged river before building a dam. Without that initial clearing, energy is wasted and you never generate real power. Going back to biology, toxic debt acts like a predator in the financial ecosystem. It weakens the host before it can reproduce or grow. Only when you eliminate the predator does the system reach equilibrium and thrive. Warren and I have always prioritized a solid foundation over expansion. That simple discipline explains much of Berkshire's success over decades. From a thermodynamic perspective, high debt increases financial entropy. It scatters your capital across useless payments, creating constant disorder. Paying it off restores order, conserving energy for productive activities. This isn't poetic metaphor, it's a direct application of basic principles to your personal finances, and it works precisely when you apply it without excuses. Historical bubbles like the dot-com bubble of 2000 illustrate the danger. Many invested while still in debt, envying the quick profits of others, only to lose everything when it burst. I have repeatedly warned against envy as a cardinal sin in finance. It blinds you to real risks and pushes you toward decisions that mathematics strongly disapproves of. In positive psychology, paying off debt builds deep self efficacy, that inner confidence in controlling your financial destiny. This feeling prepares you to invest with a cool head without euphoria or panic. I've seen many intelligent people fail for lack of this psychological foundation. Early debt discipline forges character that lasts a lifetime. From a fundamental ethical standpoint, carrying unpaid debts or ignoring them is a lack of integrity toward yourself and those who trusted you. Pay what you owe to gain true moral freedom. I practiced this my entire life and never regretted it. This inner honesty is a prerequisite for clear and sustainable investment decisions. The biology of longevity teaches a similar lesson. I reached 99 by always thinking long term. Eliminate early debt so that compounding of wealth, health, relationships works smoothly for decades. This extended vision transforms ordinary results into extraordinary ones with unwavering patience. In vector physics, add up real forces. Debt is a constant and predictable negative vector. Investment is positive but variable. Neutralize the negative first so that the net result truly takes you upward, not just temporary illusions that a volatile market can quickly erase. The Great Recession of 2008 perfectly illustrates this. Bad debt, especially subprime mortgages, amplified investment losses to catastrophic levels for millions. Today, with average mortgages around 6.2%, if they are tax deductible and at a reasonable fixed rate, they could be considered good debt, but only if there aren't credit cards at 22 to 23% simultaneously draining resources. Practical threshold for December 22nd, 2025. If your debt exceeds 7 to 8% with inflation at 2.5% in November and 10-year treasury bonds yielding around 4.7%, pay it off first without hesitation. Mortgages at 6.2% adjusted for tax deductions allow for parallel investment, always with a wide safety margin and no outstanding consumer debt. To conclude this thread with a practical point, on December 22nd, 2025, if any of your debts have an interest rate higher than 7 or 8%, considering November's inflation of 2.7% and 10-year treasury bonds yielding around 4.17%, pay them off first without hesitation. This is a guaranteed return higher than expected in average markets. Current mortgages averaging around 6.2%, if they are fixed rate and tax deductible, could be classified as good debt that allows for parallel investment, provided you maintain a wide margin of safety and don't have consumer debt at 22 to 23% simultaneously draining resources. This distinction between toxic debt and productive debt is key to avoiding simplistic generalizations. Let's continue integrating mental models because true worldly wisdom arises from viewing the same problem from different angles. Combining behavioral psychology with historical lessons protects us from repeating age old mistakes. Entire generations have ignored high debts during times of euphoria only to be devastated when reality hits. This multidisciplinary connection prevents us from falling into mental silos and gives us a more robust and honest view of financial reality. With a touch of gentle sarcasm, let me put it bluntly, trying to invest seriously while burdened with high interest debt is like attempting to run a marathon with a lead backpack. You might advance a few meters through sheer willpower, but you'll end up exhausted and far behind those who traveled light. Elegance lies in simplifying first, not complicating with unnecessary leverage. In biological terms, high interest debt chronically elevates cortisol levels, generating constant stress that clouds judgment and wears down the body. Paying it off restores emotional and mental balance, giving you back the clarity to evaluate investment opportunities without the distortion of fear or persistent guilt. This inner peace is not a luxury, it's a prerequisite for rational long term decisions. From the perspective of relativity applied to finance, time is literally money. Every day with high debt accelerates the erosion of your net worth, while a solid investment builds it patiently and compoundly. Ignoring this acceleration of time is like pretending that gravity doesn't affect all objects equally. History offers us inspiring examples, such as Alexander Hamilton's insistence on paying off the revolutionary debts of the young United States to generate credit worthiness and enable massive investment in infrastructure and growth. Without that sound foundation, the nation would have remained mired in perpetual mistrust. With it, it took off toward prosperity. The psychology of framing change your mindset. Instead of viewing debt repayment as a painful loss, reframe it as a huge gain. Every dollar of interest avoided is money that stays in your pocket, a real guaranteed and tax free return that few investments can match. Basic marginal utility economics, that extra dollar applied to a debt at 22-23% generates much more practical value, more real utility than the same dollar invested in a market that historically averages 10%. This isn't a subjective opinion, it's elementary math that anyone can verify with a simple calculator. The biology of hedonistic adaptation teaches us something profound. We quickly become accustomed to the pleasures of increasing wealth from successful investments, but the profound freedom of living without debt endures as a stable satisfaction that does not fade with time or market fluctuations. Applied energy conservation physics, your total capital is limited. Financial energy, high debts are constant leaks that dissipate that energy in unproductive payments. Eliminate them first to conserve and channel all that power toward real and sustained compound growth. Looking back on my own journey with blue chip stamps, we paid off all outstanding debts to pivot freely toward higher value opportunities, such as the strategic investment in Berkshire Hathaway. Without that prior clearing, every move would have been constrained by draining interests, and the risk would have multiplied unnecessarily. That early discipline made the difference between stagnation and exponential growth. Body looking back on my time with blue chip stamps, because personal anecdotes illustrate things better than any abstraction. We paid off all outstanding debts to move with complete freedom toward greater opportunities, such as the strategic investment in Berkshire Hathaway. Without that initial cleanup, every decision would have been constrained by the constant drain of interest payments, multiplying unnecessary risks. That early discipline, clearing the anchor before setting sail, made the difference between modest growth and the exponential compounding that transformed everything that followed. Today, with credit card rates hovering around 22 to 23%, that lesson is more relevant than ever. Once you are free of toxic debt, diversify your investments wisely and patiently. Historical data shows that balanced portfolios, 60-70% in quality stocks, the remainder in bonds or equivalents, generate solid real returns over the long term. On December 22nd, 2025, with the S&P 500 averaging 10% historical nominal returns and 10-year treasury bonds yielding around 4.17%, the principle remains: buy undervalued assets, hold with a margin of safety, and let time do the heavy lifting. Herein lies the Lollapalooza effect that so fascinated me. Multiple models, psychological biases, negative debt compounding, social envy, lessons from historical crashes, align with extraordinary force to amplify errors when someone invests while carrying high debt. It's like several ocean currents pushing in a destructive direction. Recognizing this confluence and avoiding it is the essence of the worldly wisdom that saves fortunes. With a touch of good natured sarcasm, let me be blunt. If you allow high debt to win the initial round, the market will teach you humility at an exorbitant cost. I've seen brilliant people fall into that trap, believing they could outsmart basic math with temporary cunning, only to learn that financial reality doesn't forgive repeated elementary mistakes. From a biological perspective, paying off debt acts as a powerful financial vaccine. It immunizes against future volatility, against crashes that wipe out illusory gains but leave interest intact. Once vaccinated, you face investments with genuine resilience, not with the hidden vulnerability that a downturn brutally exposes. In the physics of orbital trajectories, eliminating large debts lifts you out of a low, declining orbit and into a stable, ascending one. Without that initial correction, you continue spinning in downward circles, losing altitude with each cycle of compound interest working against you. Japan's history in the 1990s vividly illustrates this point. Excessive corporate debt stifled growth for decades, turning economic powerhouse into prolonged stagnation. On a personal level, avoid that fate. Pay off what drains resources to free up capital for real and sustained growth. The psychology of minimizing regrets, a principle Warren and I always apply. Pay off large debts first to avoid deep remorse when markets fall and interest rates continue to rise relentlessly, turning tolerable mistakes into avoidable catastrophes. From a fundamental ethical standpoint, which is the cornerstone of every lasting decision, a debt is a solemn promise to yourself and to creditors. Fulfill it with discipline to preserve integrity that allows you to sleep peacefully and think clearly about future investment opportunities. The biology of exponential growth teaches a profound truth. True compounding only flourishes in a parasite free organism. It eliminates high interest debt, currently at 22 or 23%, so that wealth grows naturally, powerfully, and sustainably as nature designed it for healthy systems. Finally, in the physics of inverse entropy, high debts increase financial disorder, scattering capital on unproductive payments. Paying them off radically reduces chaos, allowing order, patient, and compound accumulation to take definitive control of your economic life, generating results that surprise even skeptics. Friends, we've come a long way by this imaginary fireplace, patiently unpacking the eternal dilemma of whether to invest or pay off debt first, using the worldly wisdom I so often championed. Mental models from psychology to unravel biases like hyperbolic discounting and loss aversion, which make us prefer illusions of quick profits over the harsh reality of draining interest. From biology, where compounding resembles natural selection, but high debt acts like parasites that impede exponential growth. From physics, with opposing forces like financial gravity and positive momentum once released, and from history, with lessons from empires like the British that prospered by paying off debt to invest, or crashes like 1929 and 2008 that ruined the leveraged. On this December 26, 2025, with credit card rates at 22 to 23%, inflation at 2.7%, and treasury bonds at 4.1%, the logic is irrefutable. Debts above 7 to 8% are the priority enemy, a guaranteed return superior to the volatile market. Remember the Lollapalooza effect in its destructive power. When psychological biases like social envy of successful investors on social media combine with negative debt compounding, historical inertia from ignored bubbles and physical entropy that disperses capital, the result is a catastrophic amplification of elementary errors. Investing with untapped anchors isn't audacity, it's intellectually dishonest stupidity, like swimming with lead weights or running a marathon with a heavy load. Sarcasm aside, this multidisciplinary confluence isn't abstract theory. It's the reality I've seen devour fortunes in my 99 years. Prioritize paying off toxic debt, credit cards at 22%, high personal loans to break negative cycles and enter positive ones. Automate payments categorized by interest rate, use mathematically adjusted snowballing methods. Only then, with a clean slate, diversify. 60-70% value stocks, the risk bonds, buying undervalued stocks with a margin of safety. Final, actionable, and practical advice. Audit your finances today. Average credit card debt of $6,500 at 22 to 23%. Mortgages at 6.2% deductible might be good if paralleled with stable investments. Calculate the opportunity cost. Paying 22% is equivalent to earning that guaranteed return versus the historical S&P 500 return of 10% with volatility. Avoid envy and overconfidence. Minimize regrets with reverse investing. Life ethics. Integrity means keeping financial promises to yourself, living below your means to avoid lifelong compounding. In evolutionary biology, it's adaptation for survival before reproduction. In Mungerian ethics, it's intellectual honesty to avoid self deception, the easiest form of self deception. Continuously apply worldly wisdom. Read Darwin for compounding, Kahneman for biases, Hamilton for national debt as a personal analogy. This reflection is not an end in itself, but an invitation to perpetual learning. Worldly wisdom doesn't solve problems once, but equips you for future dilemmas. I've lived long enough to see cycles repeat themselves: depressions, bubbles, recoveries, and always those who pay off foolish debts first emerge stronger, just as I avoided leverage in the 70s to recover quickly. Benevolent sarcasm. If you ignore this, congratulations on financing banks with interest. But if you apply it, you will see positive compounding transform lives. Multidisciplinary thinking is key. Physics for vectors, history for warnings, psychology for post-payment self-efficacy. In 2025, with volatile markets, prioritize stability over speculation. It's remarkable how long-term thinking improves short term thinking, releasing debt induced cortisol stress. Finally, as a thoughtful mentor, sharing accumulated wisdom. Pay off high debts for financial immunity, a stable orbit, and exponential growth without parasites. Berkshire wasn't built with shortcuts, it was forged with discipline, avoiding foolishness. You can do the same. Classify, automate, diversify after the cleanup. The conclusion is pragmatic. In an uncertain world, neutralize certain risks first. I lived 99 years with this philosophy. Use it for prosperous, ethical, and free lives. Don't deceive yourselves. Think multidisciplinarily. Act with pure logic. That's where true wealth lies.